So I was born in 1975, September. I was born in Haslingden, on a road called Grain Road. They used to call it Virgin's Road. It was like 4 little cottages, and I was born in one of the cottages. My life from being, a baby to being 10 was fine. I was a normal, happy little girl. Used to play out in the forest and in the woods. I was quite feral. I'd be out there like digging up sheep's heads and always nice, attractive things like that, eating worms. I was, one of these feral little kids that just wandered around. But I was happy. I was a happy little person, and that was it. And my grandparents on my dad's side lived in Blackpool. So I used to love going to Blackpool for my holidays, like any kid does. And my granddad was my hero. So, I've never met anybody like my granddad since, and I put him on this pedestal, and he was my hero. My grandma was a little bit more, she was quite strict and quite firm and a bit bolshy. So my granddad was the person who I followed around everywhere, and he was like, I just adored him. And when I was 10, my grandparents had a holiday flat, and they retired, and they opened the flat up to an old friend of theirs, a lady and her son. And the lady and her son used to spend time downstairs with my grandparents, and I'd like go into the bedroom to watch my television. And it sounds really crazy, but I can't watch James Bond films, because I was watching Dr. No, James Bond film, and this man he came into the room and decided he was going to come and lie down and watch TV with me, started sexually abusing me. I didn't have a clue what was going on. Didn't speak about it. If I looked at him, he'd be like, shh, it's okay. And I knew it wasn't okay, but I froze. I couldn't speak. It was like I was a mute. I just couldn't say anything. And I just remember letting it happen. And the following week I was there, and I became really quiet and went really within myself, and like just would sit near my granddad so that this man wouldn't be near me. But my granddad worked as well. So when he was out, this man had said to me he wanted to take me for a walk, and he had a surprise. He had something to show me. He wanted to surprise me. And I went along, and I was like, what is it? And he took me down to the seafront, and he flashed at me. And I ran all the way back to my grandma's. My grandma was on the bed reading a book, and I went in and I told her what he'd done, and she just said to me, right, you stop this now. You must never say anything like that again. You must never repeat this. It ends here. If you tell your granddad, it'll kill him. And that was it. It was like, right, I don't ever speak about it, because my granddad was my hero, and it was like, and nothing was done. No, we didn't speak about it, but the abuse became more and more, and it got worse and worse when he eventually raped me when I was 12, and I never told anybody, because my granddad said it'd kill my granddad, so I didn't. So I carried this for a long time, sort of went within myself and rebelled a little bit. It was probably hard work for my parents. I went to my cousin's wedding, and I'd cut all my hair off, because I had long hair like this, and I cut it all off thinking, right, well, if I look like a boy, I won't get raped. It'll stop. And it didn't stop. But my mum was really angry with me because I'd cut all my hair off, so I didn't look very feminine for the wedding photographs, and I was a bridesmaid. And all those pictures, I was like frowning, and we were at the top table, and I got given my first taste of alcohol. So the top table, I was given champagne. Now, I was 12, and I was absolutely wrecked out of my head. So I was laid on the floor, my bridesmaid dress, my knickers in the air. I was absolutely out of it. I was like, just thought it was absolutely brilliant, and it got rid of all the pain. I didn't think about anything. I didn't think about all these demons, all these things that were going on. So it was magical. I was like, oh, fuck, this is ace. Absolutely brilliant. So that was then the journey of me and alcohol. And I'd go to house parties. I'd always be the one who'd mix all my drinks and make all these concoctions, and I'd be sat me on urine. I'd be sick all over myself. I'd be getting off with lads. I'd be having sex. And because then, for me, sex was nothing. It meant nothing, because that had been taken, all that that niceness. And when people say, you know, it's a special moment, it had gone. So to me, I was just abusing myself. So to have sex, I would have sex with everybody and anybody. I didn't care, because I didn't want to feel it, and I'd have to be absolutely comatose, blind drunk or on drugs to have sex. It didn't make any difference to me. There was no feelings whatsoever. And this went on for quite a long time. I started doing aerosol gases at parties, taking aerosol cans with me and some towels, and, you know, people would be drinking and I'd be sniffing the gas, and I smoked cannabis. I was just out there. I was just this crazy teenager that was just wild. At 16, I met a bloke who was 26 years old. So I was still at school. Well, I was just leaving school. And I met this man, and I thought, oh yeah, brilliant. You know, I know what I'm doing. I'll leave home. And he beat the living daylights out of me for 18 months. He was on steroids, and he'd just get me absolutely drunk as anything. Absolutely. Honestly, I was a mess. And then he'd beat me. He'd urinate all over me. He just was he broke my nose. He battered me that many times. I went to college. He wouldn't let me go to college on my own. I had to dress in like tracksuits, no makeup, and I just looked scruffy really. And he'd drop me off at college, and then he'd pick me up, and he'd make me get up at 5:30 in the morning to go down to the factory where he worked, to sit with him till I went to college, and then he'd lock me in the house while he went to the gym, and I'd just sit at the window. We didn't have the telephone, mobile phones, and, you know, I was isolated, and I was lonely, and I was drinking, and I was letting him beat me every day. And I learned to curl up in a ball and let the beatings carry on. I learned to go down the stairs on my bottom, so that he won't, because he'd kick me from top to bottom. So I've learned to go down on my bottom to shuffle down, and it was just coping mechanisms. And this went on for a long time, and I plucked up the courage to leave him. And I left him, and I went back to my mum and dad's, and he tried to like get me to go back, and, you know, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. And he did do it again. I went back and he did it again. So I left, and this time I left for good. But I was that damaged. I would go out and drink, and I'd get so drunk I'd end up fighting. And because I'd been beaten by this man who was like 3 times the size of me, steroids, big muscly bloke, it was nothing for me to go out and fight with women. It didn't bother me, and it was like I enjoyed the pain. So I'd drink and I'd fight and I'd get arrested, and it was just like I didn't care. And I was 18, and I met this man who became my husband, and he was really kind. He was lovely. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle somebody being kind and loving and not violent and not calling me a slag and a prostitute and a fat cow. And I couldn't handle it, you know, and I just didn't believe that this person loved me like he did. And he did. And I married him, and I moved down to Portsmouth to be an army wife. But again, my husband was quite quiet. And I was just out there loud, drinking, fighting. You know, I didn't change my ways at all. I was hard work. And I became pregnant with my first child. And obviously then the drinking sort of was contained. You know, I wasn't going out on these crazy nights. I sort of looked after myself and was well behaved, really. And I had my first child, Holly. She was born in 1996. She's beautiful. And at 6 months old, she got diagnosed with something called severe combined immune deficiency. She had no immune system. She was born with no immune system. And after a trip to intensive care Guy's Hospital, where she had pneumonia, they found out that the type of pneumonia she had was only with people with immune deficiencies. So we went down all the different tests of like the AIDS, HIV, cancers, and it was found that she had this immune deficiency that was genetic. She was born with it, and we had more chance of winning the lottery than it happening to our child, which was about as much luck for me. So my daughter ended up in Great Ormond Street waiting for a transplant, and my world just crumbled, really. So I'd still drink when I was at Great Ormond Street. I'd sit out with the other parents. I met children with such horrific conditions. My life was then contained. I lived in a bubble. I lived in isolation for a year with my daughter. So I was again isolated. It was yet again, I went back to being isolated. My brother used to come and see me, and he'd stand at the window pick the phone up and speak to me through the phone, through the window. And that was my life for 12 months, watching my daughter go through all the treatments that she needed, the chemotherapy, the bone marrow transplant. And it was tough, you know, and me and my husband, we stayed together through this, but it was tough. It was tough. And this was our journey. We were on the news, we were on Granada Reports, we were in the newspapers, you know, trying to provide awareness for getting bone marrow donors. And in 1998, my daughter died at Alderhay after a horrific hemorrhage. And I watched my daughter, and I didn't think anyone could bleed from every orifice, but I watched my daughter, and it was the most horrific experience I have ever had to go through. No parent should ever have to witness what I did, and I did. And I held my daughter and I gave her a big kiss and a cuddle, and I crumbled. I think I was about 23, 24 years old, and it was like, what do I do now? What do I do? I don't know how to live. I don't know how to do anything. And I didn't live very well. I drank heavily. I got in trouble for fighting. I pushed my husband away. And then I became pregnant with my son. And me and my husband, I had my son. We were told that it could be genetic again. I went through it. I was like, no, I'm not risking. I'm having this child. This is a sign. This is God telling me that this is my sign. You know, I've been a parent. This is it. And I refused any testing. My son had a bone marrow donor ready, waiting for when he was born, for if, you know, this was needed. He was tested at birth. He was born at Manchester, St Mary's in Manchester, the big genetic testing place, and thank God he was clear, but I couldn't cope. So even all this, you know, my head was just like, something's going to happen, something bad's going to happen. And my drinking just took a really big dive, and my depression, I struggled with depression, anxiety, and my marriage broke down. Still speak to my husband, my ex-husband to this day, you know, still have a good friendship with him. He's a good man, you know. And I left the house, and I brought my son George up on my own as a single mum. Did obviously, he saw his dad. But again, you know, I didn't really want to leave the marriage. I did, you know, this was one man that actually showed me love, and I just couldn't cope with it. I didn't know how to love him back. I didn't know what to do. And I just thought it would be the best thing to let him move on with his life, which he did. And then I was on my own with my son for a few years, and the drinking, I was sniffing cocaine. I'd been introduced to cocaine, and I thought, this is fucking brilliant, excuse my French. This is ultimate, this. So drinking cocaine, I thought, I can drink and then I can do coke all night and it'll sober me up. It'd be brilliant. Job's a good one. And I'd spend a fortune, absolute fortune. So I did this for a while, and then I met another man. So again, I was having these relationships with men where I was just having sex randomly, didn't care. I was like prostituting myself. I'd go to hotel rooms, meet men that I didn't know. They'd pay for the room, they'd buy me alcohol, I'd have sex, and it'd be like, nice one. Probably didn't even know half of the names, honestly, the situations I've put myself in, been wandering around the streets of Manchester on my own, getting taxi drivers to go and find me someone to buy cocaine. It was just a mess. My life was a mess. And luckily I had my parents to sort of help me with my son. You know, they were providing for him, making sure that he was fed and looked after while I was just out causing chaos. I had a relationship with a man and fell pregnant with my daughter, Rosie. Had my daughter, and he again was another violent person who beat me regularly. He'd go out and sleep with prostitutes. He'd cheat on me. He was just, again, I'd gone straight into another toxic relationship, and the drinking again was just constant. Just, you know, I drank to numb the pain of everything. And then I split up with this man, and I found out that he was sexually abusing my daughter. So I actually then got a suspended jail sentence because I beat him, and I beat him really badly. And I ended up, the police said that I'd gone from persecutor to perpetrator. I took self-defence into my own hands. This man had beaten me and sexually abused my daughter, and I thought that I was like, well, this is what you should do. What the police won't do anything, so I'll do it. And I ended up with a anger management program, suspended prison sentence, 18 months probation. The Star Project were there supporting me because they said it's domestic abuse, and I just couldn't see it. I was like, no, I battered him. They've seen the pictures, the police have seen the photographs, they've shown me the photograph. I've done it. And I had, but they were saying, well, you need to sort of fight this because you have been put through years of domestic abuse and violence. But I didn't. I pleaded guilty. And I think from there, Inspire and the Alcohol Dependency Service became involved, and a little glimmer of hope. There was like a little bit of like, right, there is people, there is support. I do have a massive problem here with drink. I have a massive problem with my anger. There's a lot of stuff here I need to deal with. And I sort of did start getting help and getting some counselling and piecing bits together. And I met my second husband, who I married, who I thought was there to I thought, yeah, this is it. I've got my forever family. And he turned out to be everything that I just didn't want him to be. I had 2 children with him. I've got 2 sons with him. He was extremely narcissistic. I know all about red flags now. I'm completely aware. I've had to have lots and lots of therapy. It's quite embarrassing that I have to know about narcissistic behaviour, but yeah, I could write a book on it now. And he was very, very controlling, very, very toxic, very jealous, and would just constantly call me names, put me down, accuse me of things that I hadn't done. I was the most faithful wife ever. I was sober. I'd managed to be sober. I'd done 7 years sobriety in this marriage, but it was very controlling. So I'd done it without really getting any sort of outside support. I sort of came away from Inspire and I just sort of shut myself away and got sober and clean, and thought this is the right thing to do. Didn't speak to anybody, didn't have social media. If I had friends, he'd say that they were slags, or they were this, they were that, or if I spoke to a man, I was sleeping with them, and it was just constant. And I felt like a bad person because I know that in my past I'd done things, and I thought perhaps this is real, then perhaps I am a nasty person, perhaps he is right. And so I just allowed it to happen. He threatened to slice my throat. He threatened to burn me. He told me to dig my daughter up. And I stayed with this man. And then 3 years ago, I found that he was actually abusing crack cocaine, and I threw him out. And I went through hell because I was then told by him that because I was in recovery, oh, you think you know it all, don't you? Oh, you think you're this now, don't you? You're like, nobody took your kids off you. Nobody did this to you. And I felt like, am I like looking down on him? Is this me again doubting myself? But I had to. He had to move him. I had to go out of my house because my children couldn't be around that. I know what I'd put my children through, my drinking, the safeguarding, and I thought, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to allow another person to do this to these children. I can't do this. And but it was hard because he was like, you had the help and the support. So I tried to support him, but I couldn't do it. He was very, very toxic, very manipulative. I became really codependent. I became more obsessed with his addiction than my own. And my recovery just faltered, and I lapsed. I relapsed. So after 7 years, thinking I'd smashed it, I relapsed, and I relapsed quite badly. And again, it went on for about 18 months where I was drinking, getting myself in trouble, thinking I'd got it contained and I was all right, but I wasn't, and ended up again sat in my own urine, just a mess. So I came back to Red Rose because I'd already been involved with Red Rose about 10 years previous, just a little bit, like I just dipped into it slightly, and I liked what it was about. So I ended up coming back on and thinking, right, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to go on to a Zoom meeting. The COVID had just sort of kicked off, and thought, right, I don't need to go anywhere. I can, just go to these meetings on Zoom. And I've not looked back. And I went on to my first Zoom meeting, and I was, as you probably won't believe this, but I was quite quiet and quite shy, and but I loved it, and I loved what the people were about. And I've not looked back. And I was asked to do my life story, and I came on here and did my life story, and then I was asked to, you know, do speaker boot camp, and I was like, these people actually like me and believe in me. And I think what it is I'm just so honest. I am honest. I can be fiery. I can be, you know, I speak out. I've got a lot of passion. I've got a lot of love for people. And I like to, you know, I have been a pain in the backside, and I have done bad things. You know, I have hurt people. But I found my life really confusing. And in February this year, you know, so I came to Red Rose. I got a little job with them in January, and then in February this year, I was then made aware that my dad, who'd brought me up all my life, who passed away sadly 5 years ago, wasn't actually my biological father. So I was then contacted by a man who decided to tell me that he thought he was my biological dad. So that really turned my world upside down. I've got a lot of things going on at the moment. There's a lot of questions. I did meet up with this man, and it wasn't very nice. I didn't like what he was about. I didn't like what he had to say about anything. He was someone of these people that doesn't respect women, and obviously, you know, that upset me. And I've not heard from him since. And I think there's a feeling of rejection again by him, because he came into my world at 45 years old to tell me that he's my dad. He lives locally. I've got sisters I didn't know about. And then he's just gone, and it's like, wow, rejection again. So I have this massive thing around men and rejection. And but the beautiful thing about Red Roses is, well, I've got myself clean and sober. I have got relationships with men. I've got friendships that are genuine. And I at the beginning, I used to doubt and think, do they think I'm after anything, or do they think I'm a slapper, or do they? And I'd like ring up and like, do you think I'm I really think I'm a slag? They're like, no, not at all. Right, so I don't like come across as one. No. And I had to have all this. Now I know that I'm a good person. I know that I'm in a good place. I know that I'm recovering, and I'll always be in recovery. But I know that I'm genuine. I don't need to lie. You know, I am me, and that's the end of it. And I don't have to make all these excuses for myself. I had a past. I've done what I've done. But here and now, I'm in a better place, and I can truly say that the family on Red Rose, honestly, it is a full family. I have never had so much support from people, and love, unconditional love. You can go back out there, and if you relapse and you come back, no one's going to say a single thing to you. They're just going to open their arms up and love you. And this is what I absolutely love about this place. And I do believe that I owe my life to Red Rose. I really do, you know, and I'm still working on my recovery. I work hard. I get the support that I need to. And I just love it. And I just think, you know, for the grace of God, I'm here. And I do believe in higher powers. And I believe that my daughter, Holly, is my higher power. And I think that, you know, she's looking down on me. And, you know, I say my serenity prayer every single night when I go to bed. And I do believe that there is, you know, something out there definitely that is looking after us. And I know it's sad when you see that obviously horrific things that go on in the world. But I have to hold on to the fact of my faith. I have to believe that there's definitely something, you know, that keeps us all going. So I hope I've not waffled on, because I think that was probably like really long. So I do apologise. But that's me.